talk. Talking's great. See, you can say words, make friends, tell everyone everything you're thinking and feeling.
Ladies, gentlemen, and adventurers of all ages, Baldurs Gate 3 is the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it? I mean, still to this day, there are things in this game many people haven't done and might not even know about in the first place. Hell, I bet there is at least one thing in this game that none of us know about yet, that aren't the devs at least. I wouldn't put it past them to make something that hidden because it's just the kind of tiny detail that feels at home within a game this big. That said, there are a lot of things around this game that aren't exactly easy to spot your first go around, so today we'll be going over another collection of particularly rare items in Baldurs Gate 3 that only a small percentage of the player base actually has, for one reason or another. A disclaimer as usual that while in technical in-game terms, legendary weapons have the highest rarity, I am not generally including those as people are quite aware of most of them, how to get them, and many people do have them all. This isn't really an in-game rarity thing, it's literal rarity of acquiring, though there can be slight overlap between the two, which will be one of our entries today. We'll be heading generally in chronological order too, so you know what part of the game that we're in. Starting off then with our first item of the day, we have Pale Oak, a rare quarterstaff. This item is rare in the sense that the only way that you can get it is by being a druid, and by being one early on in Act 1 when you complete a specific quest. On top of that, it's never made obvious that you need to be a druid to get this reward in any way. This is all related to a specific early quest called Investigate Kaga. First, you have to go to this location in the Emerald Grove to find Kaga's chest, lockpick your way through, and in here is the half-torn note. If you read this, you'll learn about a meeting that she was going to have in the swamp. That swamp is located here down in the south side on your map, so head here to have a bit of a fight. Have a look at the tree in the middle of the island afterwards to find a little interactable hole within which is the letter to Kaga. Reading this tells you about an absolutely dastardly plan, so go back to the Emerald Grove and confront Kaga about this herself. A fight will break out. You can convince Kaga to turn back to actually be a friendly if you want. Either way, a fight will break out. If at the end of the fight, Kaga is alive and you choose to spare her, and once again, only if you are a druid specifically, she will name you Faith Warden and give you this weapon. If you aren't a druid, the quest just sort of ends, and you can kill her for a different item. As for what the weapon actually is then, it's a pretty normal quarterstaff to start with, but it has an effect that stops you from getting ensnared by druidic vines, as well as making them not count as difficult terrain for you. Then you also get Faith Warden's vines once per long rest, which for 10 turns creates a patch of vines on the ground, slowing enemies and also making them roll saves against entangle. A really neat weapon to have this early on in the game for sure, and you don't really need any main story progress to get it. Second up today we have Loviatar's Scourge, a weapon in an obscure corner of the Goblin Camp in Act 1 that you can only get by being hostile to an otherwise lovely person. Very lovely. That person is Abdurak in Act 1 within the Shattered Sanctum area of the Goblin Camp. Specifically, at this specific location, you can find this NPC. If you engage in combat with the whole camp, they will not get involved, which means that this is easily missable if you do just to get aggressive with the Goblin Camp, because you can only get this weapon if you kill this NPC, not through dialogue of any kind. If you manage to assassinate them, stealthily or otherwise, you can then loot them to pick up Loviatar's Scourge, a mace, 1d6 bludgeoning with a bonus 1d6 necrotic damage that comes at a price called Wailing Whip. You get resistance to necrotic damage just in general, and when you attack, you do 1d6 necrotic damage as a bonus to any nearby targets, but that includes yourself. This grants you resistance though as well, so it means that you take less damage than anyone else from the roll that you hit, so it is still pretty neat and pretty good, and it's a pretty odd one to find too. Third in our collection is the Sickle of Boooal, a fun little weapon that is pretty solidly statted and relatively obscurely located. If you enter the Underdark from any other location than Auntie Ethel's, you will probably have missed this, and even if you did enter it there, you may have made the wrong choices by being too empathetic, weirdly. That said, this is in Act 1 in the Underdark specifically. To get there from down in the Underdark, you want to go to this exact spot, and then you can jump across the mushrooms to get to the cliff face that will lead you to the Festering Cove. Watch out for the exploding mushrooms on the way down here, as they are sort of just built to mess with you, to say the least. Once in the Festering Cove, simply walk up to the group of Kuatoa in the middle of the area, talk with the named one to initiate some fun dialogue. If you succeed some knowledge checks here and there, you'll figure out that the ruse is going on here. And most nice people would probably tell the Kuatoa about what's happening and then move on, but if you back up the story, and if you continue the lie that's happening, you'll be given this weapon as soon as the conversation ends. As far as what it is a particularly strong sickle weapon, 2d4, which is above average for a sickle, but with a special bonus effect, Boooal's Blessing, giving your weapon attacks with this advantage on attack rolls against bleeding enemies, so this is really top tier among sickles. animals. Fourth, then we have some fun with some rats in order to get the justiciar's scimitar, which not only sounds really fun as a name, it sort of rhymes, but it is a real neat item too. In order to get this, you have to do some pretty specific stuff. This is located in the Gauntlet of Shar in Act 2, specifically on the lower level of the area. You can actually climb down this cliff face on the side here, and then climb down even further to get to this exact spot that I am moving to over here. Over there is a book that you can interact with and read, and after doing so, a rat will spawn in right beside the book. You can use Speak with Animals to talk with this rat, and it will offer you treasure for leaving it alone, which is realistically the good person option, the one that a lot of people would probably choose, because the other choice is to just attack the rat. If you attack the rat, however, you will be attacked by more rats, and more rats, and more rats, until you eventually have killed just all of the rats in the world. At that point, you will meet Lurthendor, a dark justiciar, who wants to fight you as well. Do so, and kill him, and loot them to find the sword in question. The sword then is 1d6 damage, plus 2 enchantment, chance to blind targets if you have advantage on the attack, and a special weapon attack called Shadow-Soaked Blow, which adds your proficiency bonus to the damage as well as doing bonus 1d6 psychic damage, and it doesn't break concealment either if you are hiding too. On which note, it's worth mentioning this actually gives you a second item as well, the Justiciar's Greatshield, which has plus 2 AC, Shield Bash, of course, advantage on perception, which is pretty neat, and then Darkness Cloak, which lets you create a cloud of magical darkness and also use the hide action while in it, and you can use this once per short rest. Fifth up, we have to move on to Act 3 properly, and here we're going to be having the Absolute Confidence Amulet. This one is sort of silly as to why it's rare, because it's not really hard to find where you get this from. It's not difficult, it's not obscure, it's just, well, annoying to most people, so they never find it as a result, or maybe even never think to do the same thing over and over. The reason is that it comes from a lot of dialogue that is broken up into different chunks, specifically in Act 3 at Worm's Crossing. In this building here, you will be immediately jumped on by Knobber, who just wants people to listen to him talk, basically. You can have a conversation with him that will eventually end, and most people would then walk away, assuming he didn't have more things to say. But because he just loves talking, you can talk to him again, and he'll have new dialogue. Talk to him after that, and he has more new dialogue. Do this about 13, 14, maybe even 15 times or so, and eventually you'll reach the end of his just massive list of things he wants to tell you, and he'll give you an item for being his friend, the Absolute Confidence Amulet, which gives you +1 to performance, -1 to intimidation. Not the craziest item as far as power goes, but how many of you honestly listen to this guy talk for like 5 minutes doing silly impressions of the different classes, only to realize that there was actually an item at the end? Sixth today, we have the lovely Slinging Shoes, and this is actually a continuation of an item from last time that we did one of these collections, related to Gale's cat, Tara. When you start Act 3 on the roof of the Open Hand Temple in Rivington, you can find Tara, and only if you have Gale with you, you can get the proper interaction that forces this to move forward. If you speak with animals, it will sound like she is going to move to the lower city, but then she just sort of disappears forever, which might be a bug, but if you speak to her with Gale around, she would in fact move to the new location and actually have some goodies for you. After that, you want to head to the lower city and go to the top of the Devil's Fee building on the northern side, because on the roof you can find Tara once again, offering to sell you an item which is very solid, but after you do that, Tara will fly away again. But you can find her once again. You have to do a long rest in between these. Just keep that in mind, you have to do it. If you don't, then she won't be where she's supposed to. But once you do, she will be on top of the roof of Highberry's home, which is where the wine festival is going on in the city. Interact with her here and she will offer to trade you these Slinging Shoes, and it's actually really quite cool, as what they actually do is just, they're made for throwing. When you throw these boots, they immediately return to you. They're throwing boots. On hit, they also deal 2d4 of bonus psychic damage when you throw them. I don't know why I had to specify that you throw them, because you can't hit with them any other way, because you can't like equip the pair of boots in your hand and just start smacking with them, though that would also be funny. The last couple of items today then are going to be in the House of Hope in Act 3, which is a pretty major area, but both of these items are incredibly missable. The first of which comes near the end of the area. After you free Hope by following the objectives, you have her join your party until you leave as a controllable ally. You can then use Hope to take advantage of her once per lifetime Divine Intervention cast as a Cleric, use it for Arm Thy Servant, which will create a full-on unique legendary weapon that has quite some power, the Devotee's Mace, and here comes the fun part. Before the recent patch, you could just throw the weapon and pick it up from someone in your party real easy, but in this patch they actually tried to remove as many ways of getting unintended weapons as possible, so they removed the ability to make short-term party members throw their own equipment. What they didn't get rid of, however, is Disarming Strike, the fighter move. So if you have a fighter with you who has this maneuver, you can make Hope spawn the legendary weapon, then Friendly Fire disarm her, which drops it on the floor for you to pick up right on one of your actual party members, and now it's yours forever. Her loss, really. Then we have the Trident +1, not a particularly fancy weapon, but the way that you get it is pretty specific, at least this version of it. Again in the House of Hope, but right when you are trying to leave. You start a nice big boss fight with Raphael, where he spawns in a bunch of Cambion allies for himself. If you then take a page from our last move and use Disarming Strike against the Cambions, they will drop this weapon, which is slightly better than any other Cambion weapon, just a neat detail for a different way of getting a weapon. The weapon itself is very simply just 1d8 piercing damage, but +1 from weapon enchantment, and it has Disarming Strike as a weapon action too, so you can actually do the exact action we just did if you aren't a fighter, if you have something like this. And that's gonna be it for today, everyone. Another collection of 8 or 9 exceedingly rare items of Baldur's Gate 3, just due to their obscure location, their strange path to acquiring, uncommon decisions needed, or just a need for specific situations or spells in one exact moment, like being a druid at the very start of the game, for example. I hope you've enjoyed checking out all these obscure things in their rarely trodden places, and let me know in the comments down below if you know of any more rare items you think more people need to be aware of. Like if you liked the video, subscribe with the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.